Welcome to part 2 of the lesson 25 to 27 review, where we're dividing a unit fraction by a whole number and a whole number by a unit fraction. And we just recently went ahead and looked at the whole number first in the last video. And we drew models knowing how important it is to create those models in our helping understanding. We also talked about the fact that if you start with a whole number, you're going to end with a whole number, a little bit of a hint there. Right? 5 wholes give us 10 parts or 10 pieces all cut up into a half. This next one here is that exit ticket from lesson 26, looking at just the key points that were and key problems. And this one has the fraction first. And what we're going to do is we're going to solve these by drawing models. And I know that you don't have this pic here, so if you're in your workbook, you can open up the lesson 26, find that left-hand side that's blank and work on it, and there you have a great resource. If you don't have it, a scratch piece of paper, even a whiteboard, some of you like to use, certainly do that. But no matter what way you're going to use to write your work, no matter what, we're going to draw a tape diagram. We're modeling it. Okay? So it's saying here that we have a half. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a half. And I know a half is in relation to a whole. So I'm just going to label this as my half, meaning the entire model is my whole. Right? And I only have a half. And we talked about that maybe this was a candy bar and I only have half of it. And this other half here I ate for, well, watching a movie the other day. Or melted in my pocket and I had to throw it out. Or my dog Jake ate it. Who knows what it is? But we're only left with a half of here. But I am going to now cut it and divide it into 4 pieces. Okay, so I am going to then draw 3 lines for my 4 pieces. Okay? And when you have it divided into 4 pieces, we're ultimately looking for this missing piece here. What is that piece? And maybe I'll even highlight it here too. I'm looking at for just this section. Maybe I went ahead and I am keeping this piece for myself. Maybe Mr. Phillip is keeping this one. Maybe Harper is getting a piece later on. Maybe Emerson is getting this, and the mom, Emerson's mom, is getting this. So we'll say mom. All right. So what piece am I going to eat? Well, I'm getting 1 piece. There's fraction. Right? But we know that we need equal pieces. We can't just say it's 1/4 because it's really not 1/4. It's really 1/4 of a half. Right? So we really want to think about this also being cut into 4 pieces. So think now I have 1 out of the original whole candy bar. There's 8 pieces. There's 4 here and 4 here. So I have 1/8 of a candy bar. Now, as I was saying that, it sounds pretty interesting that if I had a whole candy bar, let's label this here as my whole, and I'm only taking half of it. Here's my half. And then I'm going to decompose this into 4 parts, just as we did moments ago. There's my 4 parts. And I'm looking just for the 1 piece. Again, highlighting just this 1 piece. Notice the vocabulary that I've used. I want just this piece right here. And now listen, as I'm going to repeat that phrasing. I want 1/4 of the 1/2. Because that's ultimately what this is asking. 1/2 divided by 4 is another way of thinking. I have a half of it, and I'm taking 1/4 of it. What is this? What is my missing piece? Well, we've done this weeks ago here. Of really means multiplying. Really, of 1/4 times a half. And what's 1/4 times a half? 1/8. And look at that, it matches this one way over here. So I like, again, no matter which way I'm thinking models. Models, models, models. All right? and we end up with an eighth. That little hint, little key to help you, if it starts with a fraction, it's going to end in a fraction, your quotient, your answer. So let's do another one for practice. Here was where you can certainly pause the video if you'd like, test it on your own, and then play it to see how you did. You're still a little confused, just follow along with me. Starting 1/8 divided by 5. So I really only have an eighth. But originally, I had one whole. So here's my whole tape diagram. Let's label that one whole. But now I only really want is an eighth of it. So 7 lines give us 8 parts. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's double check. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pieces. I'm also going to then label this as my 1/8. And no matter what happened to these previous, okay, they melted, they broke apart, I gave them away, whatever that may be, I only have 1/8. But maybe I want to break it up into 5 pieces as it states. So I'm going to take this, cut it into 5 pieces, or 4 lines. Woo. 3, squeeze in another one, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. And I am looking for, let's get my highlighter out, one of these pieces. I want to keep one. I know I'm really a generous kind of guy, just as you are. We're going to keep one of them, and I'm going to give the rest away. So I really have, if we think about it, 1/8 of, or excuse me, I have 1/5. Let's back that up. I have 1/5, here's 1/5 of the 1/8. And we know that would be 1/5 times 1/8. And as we multiply across, 1 times 1 and 5 times 8, we should have 1/40th as our answer. And this is really 1/40th. It is correct. Now, how would we look at it in this model as a whole? We would cut this one up into 5 pieces. Okay, so I would draw my 4 lines. So notice that in here I have 5 parts. In this part here I have 5. In here, decompose it, I would have 5 parts. And I would have 5 parts for each one if I was cutting it up. And if as I cut these up, I'd say how many total pieces are there? Well, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40. There's 40 pieces. I want one. 1/40th is our answer. And lastly is trying to put all that together in a word problem. And here we go. Larry spends half of his workday teaching piano lessons. Oh, what a great profession. He sees 6 students, each for the same amount of time. What fraction of his work is spent with each student? So let's find our details. Spends half the day teaching piano. He sees 6 students. What fraction? Ooh, there's a fraction. Need a fraction. All right. We might say it in a sentence as we aren't going to forget our RDW. We just read it. Okay, we found our details. Now we're also going to write. He spends blank of his workday. And I'm sure you would be much neater with a pencil rather than this tablet. Workday with each student. Put a period at the end. Now, first, how much of the day does he spend teaching? Well, he spends half of it. There's half of it. And he's dividing half of it equally among the 6 students. Again, I had to stop and think about what is going to be first. And what did he start with? He didn't start with 6 students, and he's going to cut them in half. It's just not reasonable. And we talked about that in fraction form before school closed. Right? We're not going to cut up the students or divide them up. We're going to take a half of the workday and break them up. So let's draw it here. You can pause the video to help you solve it on your own first. If not, I'm going to start by drawing my half and labeling it, breaking it up into how many parts? 6. Be 5 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm looking for, and this is where you could use just the side of your pencil, shade that in, just that one little part. What's one, this is one student going to get. Here's one student, one student, one student. How much of the day is he getting? Well, in order to have equal pieces, this is not equal. I need to cut this one into 6 pieces as well. Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. What fraction is it? What are we left with? Well, there's one piece for each student. And how many altogether? And again, we said that there's 6 here and 6 over here. There's 12 parts of the day. 12 open spots. He's taking one of them. So he spends 1/12 of his workday with each student. You could also think about this, as we mentioned in multiplying. You have a half, right, and you're taking 1/6 of the half. We know that's multiplying to give you 1/12. We can certainly just multiply those across with being multiplying. Okay. Now, does it make sense he spends 1/12 of his day with each student? Yeah. Would it make sense that he spends 12 of his work day with each student if we flipped them? No, it doesn't seem reasonable. 12 what? We didn't even have a label here. It would have to be minutes, hours, and we can convert it if we really needed to, but it's not asking us there. It's asking us for a fraction. So keep that in mind. And lastly, I'm not going to go ahead and answer this one. If you'd like to, you're more than welcome to. Okay? But we're looking at this one here. This was lesson 27, okay, where you had to determine it yourself. Kevin divides 3 pieces of paper into fourths. How many fourths does he have? So is this going to, we have 3 pieces and into fourths. Are we going to have it 3 divided by 1/4? Or are we going to have it 1/4 divided by 3? It's going to be one of those, isn't it? We have to stop and think, is our work going to be reasonable? Do we fully understand it? What does Kevin start with? Well, he starts with 3 pieces of paper. Now, here I'm starting with 3 pieces, or am I starting with a 1/4? What's that? Let's move that out of the way. Let's get that out of the way. Which one is he starting with? He's starting with 3 holes. He's not starting with a 4th piece of paper. So we're going to solve this one. Okay? And as we do, we know that since we're starting with a hole, our answer down here with this beautiful looking sentence that you'd write would have a whole number to it. Okay? If you were pausing and solving on your own, you would have 12 as your answer. You'd have 12 fourths, so 12 pieces that are cut into fourths. Okay? If you have questions, please reach out to me through class comments, which is a smaller group today, or you can reach out to me in your private comments.